Every year at this time, the United Nations scrambles to pass a bundle of resolutions condemning Israel for whatever they can think of at the time, and this year was no different. 6 very biased resolutions were presented and passed this year, and they included rejecting all Jewish connection to Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people, blaming only Israel for a lack of progress on peace talks with the Palestinian Arabs, and demanding that Israel return the Golan Heights to Syria. It was the usual anti-Semitism we have come to expect from the United Nations, and I sometimes think that the only thing they are united about is in their hatred of Israel. But apart from all the anti-Israel motions put forward, US Ambassador to the UN Nikki Haley presented one on behalf of the United States condemning Hamas. It is a shame to see her go, and we have now found out that her replacement will be Heather Nauert, who was a Fox TV journalist before being recruited to the White House. However, Haley's vote wasn't carried. Why? Because just 20 minutes earlier, at the instigation of Kuwait, the General Assembly voted to require a 2/3 majority for the impending vote on Hamas. Haley pointed out at the time that the demand for a 2/3 majority was a double standard, since no such demand was ever made on anti-Israel resolutions, including the 6 passed in what she called a planned attack on Israel. She was right, of course, so even though the motion condemning Hamas got a majority, it wasn't passed because it fell short of the 2/3 needed. But does anybody remember what happened last year when all these anti-Israel resolutions came up in December? Julie Bishop was foreign minister at the time when President Trump announced his embassy move. And of course the United Nations came up with a motion disavowing the Jewish connection to Jerusalem. And Australia abstained. Back then, some of our communal leaders, along with the Israeli ambassador, told us all to calm down and not worry about it. These resolutions happen every year, they said, and every year Australia abstains because there are other more important times to stand up for Israel. Only the Australian Jewish Association was honest enough to speak up and criticise the government for taking such a cowardly and unprincipled approach. But contrast this with what happened this year. Under new Prime Minister Scott Morrison, along with only 10 other countries, Australia actually voted against these anti-Israel resolutions, which is great. So to recap, there are really 2 issues to analyse here. Firstly, the actual voting pattern, where last year Australia abstained and this year they voted against a resolution condemning Israel. And secondly, the reaction from our community leaders. Last year they brushed off Australia's abstention, and this year they are full of praise for the government. So what is it? It seems our leaders are deliriously happy when the country does the right thing, and they are, well, sort of happy when they don't. If it was the right thing to vote no this year, what about last year? I'm sorry, but this just doesn't work for me. If something is right, say so, and if something is wrong, then also say so. People want clarity from their leaders, whether it is federal, state, local or communal. We're sick of the spin. Just tell us what you think, what you believe in, and what you want to do in office, and we will then tell you if we want you to speak for us. It's not that complicated, but I suppose that once you get into power, then staying in power sometimes becomes more important than leading your community. Maybe we look at history with some undeserved romance, but it seems to me that the leaders of the past stood for something and people knew what their vision was. Churchill, Ben-Gurion, JFK, Begin, Thatcher, John Howard, and even Gough Whitlam all knew where and how they wanted to lead their constituencies. And today I would include Bibi Netanyahu in that list. In fact, a quote from Winston Churchill appeared on my Facebook page a couple of days ago. It asked, "Do you have enemies?" Good. That means that you have stood up for something sometime in your life. And yes, on the other side, there have been plenty of despicable and evil people who have also had a vision, but I won't honour their names by mentioning them now. It's terrific that Australia has solidified its support for Israel under PM Morrison, and I shudder to think what would have happened under a Labor government, although it looks like we may find out in due course. Something has changed over the years. Maybe it is all this political correctness, but once upon a time, our communal leaders seemed to have more courage to call out bad behaviour on sensitive issues. It's high time they got some of their mojo back. This is Alan Freedman from Nothing Left for the Australian Jewish Association.